I know I've mentioned this subject in the past, but when I was a very idealistic 25-year-old, one who came of age in the late 1960s, I went off to England to join a lay Christian community in a picturesque setting on the north coast of Devon. Just out of grad school, I had decided that I wanted to do something specifically connected to my faith for a few years before starting on a career. And the fact that I was an Anglophile of long standing and that my mother had visited and told me much of this place, it made the Lee Abbey community doubly appealing. I went with the intention of being a part of the work they did. Lee Abbey was, and remains now, maybe not so large a community. It was at one time a large community of over 60 people from around the world of different Protestant denominations, young and old, families and singles, who come together for varying lengths of time to run a holiday and conference center, a ministry of teaching and hospitality. They offer Christian worship and teaching to the over 100 guests who come most weeks, as well as recreational activities, including everything from folk dancing to long walks along the coast or up onto Exmoor. The staff also live together in intentional community, not always an easy thing. I went both because I wanted to be part of something expressive of my faith when I didn't know how to do that on my own. Young, raging introverts rarely see themselves as likely successful evangelists, as well as because I wanted to get away from a culture that suggested that I should have it all together, that as a well-educated young woman, I should have confidence that I had life, and my own life in particular, all figured out. Only I didn't. And I made the classic assumption that everyone else did. Though he is writing in the present, I think this writer's take on American expectations of folk is as descriptive of me then as it is of people now. The pressure exerted by our culture is manifold, in its manifold ways, both explicit and implicit, to have it all together, to be perfect, to have the ideal life and job and family is, I think, quietly crushing the spirit of many. And this is particularly true of that generation that has grown up having to display their supposedly perfect lives on social media. While the constant drive to take selfies and publish life updates and broadcast our thoughts via social media may, as many suggest, be a symptom of our increasingly narcissistic culture, it may also be a sign of profound and increasing insecurity, the futile effort of folks to deny that they are indeed at times harassed and helpless. We live in a time not only of the social pressures to present ourselves as put together, that ideal of the American self-made man, so deep inside us as Americans, whether we believe we buy into it or not, but also of the increasing divide between the haves and the have-nots, the ready disparaging of the less successful as losers by our former president, and the increasing unwillingness to put others' welfare before our own, whether as a nation or as individuals. Yet it is not only those on the margins who can feel the pressure, it is also folk in our very midst. It can be you and me. The young parent at her or his wit's end, feeling ill-equipped for this role, guilty about responding in impatience or anger to a child. The person's unexpectedly in midlife transition or crisis relating to a lost job. Those coping with the death of a spouse, sibling, or friend. Those whose relationships with their parents or children are simply not what they had imagined. And those who feel they are seen and dismissed because of their age, gender, sexual identity or orientation, or ethnicity. the young persons recently graduating from high school or college and who see no clear future before them, the retirees who wonder if they are valued. Jesus went about all the cities and villages, teaching in their synagogues and proclaiming the good news of the kingdom and curing every disease and every sickness. When he saw the crowds, he had compassion for them because they were harassed and helpless, like sheep without a shepherd. I grew and learned a lot over those 2 years: how to cook for 180 people, to preach my first sermon, to lead guests on long walks over the moors, to talk to strangers every day over meals and tea, to lead Bible studies, and much more. But the most important thing that I learned were from living in community, a community of not so perfect people, all reliant on the compassionate love of Christ, who were willing to be open to be known for who they really were, and who strove to extend that same compassion to all who came to share in our life for however long, for a week or as another member of the community. If it sounds too idyllic, know that it wasn't. It was messy at times, but it was authentic. As one writer says, one of Christ's gifts to us is the gift of community, where we meet our brothers and sisters heart to heart, spirit to spirit, and face to face. Christian community, that which Jesus called those disciples to share and express, is that place, that way of being, where we know and are known by the love at the center of the community. God, a life-giving, sacrificial, persistent love that calls us to reach beyond ourselves, to realize we are connected, woven together into one body, the family of God. And while it is not easy, it is essential. Our faith is not a private matter. Spirituality is all about relationship, not only to God, but to each other, to the creation. And it is in community that we meet God face to face. But despite our best intentions, we will mess up. We will fail each other and our own best selves. As I learned all those years ago and continue to relearn, what makes Christian community work and what makes us different is not only that we are forgiven, but that we know we need to be forgiven over and over again. For those of you old enough to remember the movie with the line, "Love means never having to say you're sorry," I dissent. And it is as community that we welcome all who come through these doors, and from community that we are sent out as Jesus called and sent his 12 apostles to do as he did, to have compassion on those that are harassed and helpless, to address the ills of individuals as well as the structures of our society that perpetuate our disparities, to go forth in the name of Christ to do the work that we have been given to do.